show me, so like here, show me what you get for your fractions, and then show me your ends. So I'm going to talk through Bell and Nominata did these two. I'm going to explain what they did, but if there's something I'm explaining wrong, just correct me. Nominata, you did number 8? Okay. So for this one, we needed to subtract 2/5 and 3/5, and then 2/3 and 1/2. If you got common denominators algebraically, that's fine. If you put that in your calculator, that's also fine. So you should have gotten -1/5 and 1/6. If you did this next part and multiplied by 6/1 to both of these algebraically, that was fine. If you did that part in your calculator, this is also fine. Just make sure you're writing m equals or equals m. So -6/5 was the answer to number 8. We'll come back to 9 because I'll do that one, and then yes. Say that again. Because you've got -3 is the answer for this one. Okay, and then Bella did this one. If you were doing this by hand, you would need to, and what I'll have you guys do if you get a problem like this is change those two. You wouldn't need to change everything, but just those two. I didn't ask you to do that, but that's okay. So change those two to improper fractions, which would have been 49/8 and 3/2. If you did this algebraically, you would need to get common denominators for both the 2 and the 3, and then subtract. After subtracting, you would have gotten 33/8 and then 3/2. 9 minus 3, 6, 2, yeah, because then you multiply. And you would have had to multiply by 2/3 if you were doing it by hand. Your slope was 11/4. And I just wanted to show you this one thing. 33/8 times 2/3. So if you were doing this by hand and had to multiply by this flip version, the reciprocal, it would look something like this. You could put that in your calculator, but something else you could do is kind of simplify along the way. Like, I know that 2 goes into 8 4 times. I put 38, but that was supposed to be 3. And 3 goes into 33 11 times. So you could simplify it along the way instead of putting everything in your calculator, but both work. This is 10, yes. And then for number 9, I'm going to do that one strictly just algebraically. So this would be 4.5. I'm going to set it up and then change it to the improper fractions. -1 over 3 minus 2 2/3. Changing the mixed fractions to improper fractions. That would be 9/2 minus 1 and 3 minus 8/3. But then we would need to get common denominators for the 1 and the 3. You have to remember that these right now have a denominator of 1. We just don't see it. So I would need to multiply this by 3, this by 3, this by 2, and this by 2. So we have 9/2 minus 2/2, and 9/3 minus 8/3. Subtract both, and you have 7/2 over 1/3. Multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. These would cancel and become just 1. This would become 21/2, which would just leave you with 21/2. If you put that one as a decimal, 10.5 was also fine. All of these were nice decimals, so that was fine if you put it as that. Do we have questions on any of those three? So far we've talked about how to find slope from a graph, slope from 2 points. Then last thing we have to talk about is how to find slope from the equation. So find this page in your notes. When we write equations or graph from equations, they need to be in the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. M we already know to be the slope, and b is the y-intercept. So when we were finding our x and y intercepts and we were finding them algebraically and it was written in that form f of x equals some number in front of x plus or minus some number, it was in this format, the slope-intercept form, which is why we could look at the last number and say that was the y-intercept. So for these examples, we are given slopes and we are given y-intercepts. It wants us to put these together in this equation. So for number 1, all of these have to start off with y equals. Our m, or our slope, is 2. Then we have to use x. Our y-intercept here, even though it says plus b, our y-intercept is negative, so we would just put minus 1. How would we write number 2? I'm not going to y equals 2 over 5, negative 3 over 5. Plus 4. Correct. How would we write number 3? It's y equals negative 3x plus 2. Number 4, Peyton? Y equals negative, you can put negative 1x, but you won't see it like that, so I'll just put negative x and then plus 7, yes. Michaela, number 5? Y equals 1/4x. Y equals 1/4 x. You can put plus 0, but in this case you don't need to. And then someone number 6. Who's going? So when you're given the slope and y-intercept, it's really easy to determine which one is which, and you put it in the equation, and that's it. For this part at the bottom, this is really more for like our next unit when we get into writing equations, but it is good practice, so we'll do it, but we won't really see examples like this. So here we're given graphs where we have to find the slope, find the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is the easier one because it's whichever one falls on the y-axis. So that would be this point right here at negative 4. what would your slope be? Remember, you have to count from one point to the next. Is it 3? It is 3. So, Peyton, you had your hand raised. What would this equation be?
3 over 2x minus 4.
The slope is 3. Your y-intercept is negative 4.
Oh, 3 minus 4. X minus 4.
And it has to be start off with y equals. For number 8, again, finding the y-intercept is the easiest thing because it's on your y-axis. 7. And then someone with a raised hand, what would your slope be, CK? 3 over 2. 3 over 2 or negative 3 over 2? Negative 3 over 2. So if you counted this, it would be negative 6 over 4, which reduces to negative 3 over 2. So what would that equation be? Feels good. Do we have any questions on that part of the process? That part's easier than what we're about to do. So on the back, it's really nice when we're given the slope, given the y-intercept, because we can just put those in slope-intercept form. But sometimes we're given equations that are not in slope-intercept form. They're given in standard form, and they look something like this. So when they are given in standard form, we'll need to convert it back to a slope-intercept form. So when we do this, we're basically solving this equation, but just for y. Usually when we solve equations, there's just one variable. We get the variable by itself, and it's fine. But here we have 2 variables. We're only solving for one of them, and we're going to pretend that the x is like not really a variable, but it's there, and we're just not going to mess with it. So we're going to do a few of these together. Starting with number 1, if we need to get y completely by itself, I need to get rid of 2x. If this were a normal equation, like if it was just 2, I would subtract the 2. Jenna, what were you going to say?
I was going to say you could like make the x 0.
No. So that would be for finding x and y intercepts. Don't do that. These 2 things are not the same thing. I mean, what were you going to say?
Divide both sides.
You're also not going to do that, because then y wouldn't be by itself. Kayla?
Could you subtract 2x?
We're going to subtract the entire term 2x, yes. But when we subtract it on this side, I'm going to kind of move it off to the side, because I'm not actually subtracting it with 3. I wouldn't be able to do that anyway, because they're not like terms. But I'm kind of moving it, I'm really just moving it to the other side. So this would become, these two x's would cancel. I have y equals 3 minus 2x. This is almost in slope-intercept form, but I need to switch my x term and my constant. So I would switch these 2, keeping whatever sign each one has. So this would be negative 2x plus 3. Do we have any questions on that so far? That one was an easier example because there was only one thing we really had to do. Well, 2, because we had to start somewhere. But yes, I'm gonna.
So the y equals
This one, yes. Because now it's in slope-intercept form. We don't have to do anything else with this right now. All this is asking for you to do is convert this. put it back in slope-intercept form. Owen, make sure you're paying attention. For number 2, we're going to start off doing the same thing. So we're solving for y. We need to get y by itself. We need to get rid of the 4x and the 5, but we'll worry about the 5 later. We're going to subtract 4x to the other side. But again, put it like off to the side so you know you're not actually combining negative 30 and negative 4x. If you want to, you can switch the order now. So I can put negative 4x and negative 30 instead of the other way around. If you don't do that now, you would just have to do that at the end. When you do that part, does not matter as long as it gets done. And then I still need to get y by itself because right now it has a 5 in front of it. How would I do that? Let's find it. Yes. But we're going to divide each piece by 5. So this part, and this part. That way you have 3 different terms. This would just become y. If you can simplify this, do that. If not, leave it as whatever fraction it is. So this would just be negative 4/5. And this would become negative 6. And that would be it, yep. Okay.
When you get the negative 4x, and after you rearrange your equation to 5 you then try to factor.
So we subtracted 4x, and then we switched these two. Do you have any other questions on this process? When you are converting it, hold on one second. Leave your slope as a fraction, whatever it is. Do not put decimals for this. For the y-intercept, you can do either or, as long as it's a nice fraction. I mean, that's what was your question? Change which number? I'm sorry. You figured out your question. Hey.
If it's negative 20 over 5, simplify that's negative 4 over 5.
You said negative 20 over 5. That would just be negative 4.
So it's the x was would you simplify the fraction? X?
You would simplify it, but if it was negative 20 over 5, it would just be negative 4. Okay, we're going to do... trying to remember the ones I did yesterday. 3. Yeah, we'll do 3 and then 7, and then I'll let you guys try some. So for number 3, the process starts off the same way. Get rid of x by subtracting it, and we're subtracting it because this is positive. So we're still doing the opposite thing. When I rewrite this, I'm gonna go ahead and switch these two now. So I have negative x plus 12. And then I would divide everything by negative 3. Be careful with your signs because all of them are going to change. You have y equals, this is really negative 1x over 3, negative 3. So this would be 1/3 x, positive 1/3 x. And then negative 4. If you put the x within the fraction and wrote this like y equals x over 3, that would also be fine as long as you know that's really 1/3. Bella. Yes. Other questions on that one before we do one more? We're going to jump down and do number 7. What would I do first here? Add 6x to both sides. Because this is a negative, we now have to do the opposite. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch these. And then what? By 4 to everything, yes. Six over 4 would simplify to what? 3 over 2. I like the confidence. Just double check your answer. And then plus 5, yes. So it's not too difficult once you get used to it, but at first it's kind of weird. I'm going to give you guys the next till about 28. So the next 10-ish minutes, we might go to 30, we'll see, to do these remaining 4 problems, number 4, number 5, 6, and 8. And then we'll come back and we'll check them, and then I'll explain what we're doing for the remainder of the So I still hear voices, that means your attention's not here.
I swear someone's playing music.
Okay. For number 4, your equation with y equals x plus 8. The directions also said to identify the slope and y-intercept, but I missed that and didn't have you do that. If you saw that and did that, that's fine. Number 5 was y equals 4x or 4x plus 0. 6 was y equals 3 over 2x plus 7. And 8 was negative 1/5 x minus 3.
Is it okay if we put y equals x over 5?
Yes.
Really?
That is also right.
Instead of K.
What did you say? 6 was y equals 3 over 2x plus 7. Do we have any questions on these 4? So we have now talked about how to find slope from a graph, slope from 2 points, and slope from an equation. Dylan, you can't use. And that is all of the slope stuff that we will need to cover. So for the remainder of class, these are the things I want you to be working on. You guys have 5 Khan Academies that are due today. 2 of them are intercepts, intercepts from a graph, intercepts from an equation. 3 of them are slope, slope from a graph, slope from 2 points, slope intercept intro, which is like right before we converted. And then you have, if you did not do your delta math on intercepts, that is past due, but you can still do that. And you have 2 delta maths on slope. Both of those are due by Friday, next Friday, because that's the next time I see you guys. The first part of the delta math, the slope part 1, is slope from a graph and slope from 2 points. The second part is like the converting stuff we just did. So you have plenty of things to be working on right now. If you finish all of those things, there is additional practice at the back of this that you could work on. But everyone should be working on something. Anyone have any questions on what we were doing for the remainder of class? Do you have a separate question? Okay. All right. You now have this time to work. Let me know if you